Oak Leeuwarden LLC, to construct a new family dwelling, drive, drainage, pool, patios, and other related features proximate to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the east side of Leeuwarden Road, approximately 800 feet north of Kerry Lane, and is identified as map 8, lot 8, zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.72 acres. Rick?
Some housekeeping measures for tonight's public hearing. The initial agenda advertising the acceptance of this application was posted with the town clerk on July 27, 2023. The application was accepted by the EPC at the August 2nd, 2023 meeting. In addition, the commission determined to hold a public hearing on this application based upon a determination that a hearing on this matter would be in the public interest. The applicant was given notice of acceptance and the scheduling of the public hearing on August 7, 2023. In addition, there was correspondence describing the additional information that both the commission and staff felt was necessary to properly evaluate the application, and that was transmitted to the applicant on August 7th. The notice of the public hearing was published in the Darien Times by the commission on both August 24th and August 31st in accordance with the regulations. The required public hearing fee was received by the agency. Adjoining property owners were noticed by the applicant within 100 feet of the property on August 24th. Additional information in support of this application was submitted on August 22nd, 28th, 29th, and 31st. The agenda for this public hearing was posted with the town clerk on August 31st. There is a brief agenda summary report that staff had prepared in advance of this public hearing. It was posted online the 31st. It was made available for the applicant's review. In that agenda summary report, it lists the site characteristics, the plans that have been submitted in support of the application, the plans and reports that have been submitted in support of the application, a description of the site characteristics, and the issues that are pertinent to the review, including resource impacts and impacts on drainage and adjoining properties, water quality impacts, how those matters are being addressed, and a brief review of the buffer enhancement plans and other mitigative measures that the applicant has offered to offset impacts or enhance the overall conservation values of the property. And at some point, if you'd like to do a brief, I can do a brief overview of those. However, I think the agenda summary report is descriptive, and I'm sure that the applicant will review each of those items. This evening, we've also received 4 items of information, correspondence from Environmental Land Solutions dated September 6th. There is a PowerPoint presentation from Mr. Gleason dated September 6th, and there are 2 architectural plans that have been submitted, and they are site plans. They're architectural site plans, again, in support of the application. I'm available for answer questions, and the applicants can to make their presentation and to be responsive.
Good evening. For the record, Wilder Gleason of Gleason Associates. I'm here with Jasenia Chen, who's the owner of the property of Oak Leeuwarden LLC, and Sean Shea, the builder, and Wayne DeVonzo, our professional engineer, and Matt Pop, our landscape designer and environmental expert. The package that I submitted includes the architectural plan, that site plan that Rick referenced. It also includes a letter that Matt Pop prepared today, giving an opinion that the drainage systems that we're putting in will renovate the water and create no issues with the wetlands, that there will be no substantial impact on the wetlands as a result of this development. But let me turn to the existing survey, and I'm going to try and blow this up. Anyway, for some reason I'm not able to do that at this point, given the present. Let me go back and see if I can do this a different way. Okay. This one I can blow up. So this is the survey that you have, and it shows, if you see where my pointer is, the old one-story dwelling is a 2,200 square foot building. We're on 1.27 acres, a little over 1.25 acres, and the wetlands are all in the north along here where my cursor is. That'll show up on the architect's survey, which we will provide, or the site plan that we'll provide you shortly. The existing house was well within the 50-foot wetland upland regulated area, and it didn't have any backyard. It's located 157 feet from the street. This is 157 feet to the front. Now that has been removed, and if you've been out there, you can see the site is vacant in anticipation of hopefully a speedy approval from you all so we can move forward. There are no structures to treat stormwater. There's no buffer on the wetlands. Untreated, unrenovated water runs directly into the wetlands. Let me add also that there's no underground recharge of water. There's no marking of the wetlands and sensitive areas. All of this will be addressed in the plans that we submit tonight. So we're making significant improvements over the existing conditions. Let me go to the next slide. This is the architectural site plan that was submitted this afternoon, and the green line on it, it's I think the third page in your outline. The green line is the wetlands, and you'll see they're confined essentially to the northwest corner of the property. The red line is the 50-foot regulated area, and you can see that the old house encroached substantially into it. Our new house doesn't touch the upland review area at all. Only a small portion of the pool apron or patio goes into the upland review area. The house has been moved so that it's 55 feet from the street. We've moved it 100 feet forward of the old house. The old house is shown in blue, and you can see its location proximate to the wetlands, and you can see we're so much further away. That allows stormwater runoff from the roof to be renovated, but for a greater distance before it gets into the wetlands. That reduces temperatures, it reduces particulate matter, and we have, as you'll see in the next site plan, this is our engineer's plan, which has been submitted. The green area of the roof that you see here is going to be directed into the Cultex here. They've got 28 Cultex that are located in the upland review area substantially, virtually all of them. And those will renovate, those allow us to meet the town's regulations for stormwater drainage. We will have a zero increase in runoff in a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, 25-year, 50-year storm event. So we're reducing stormwater runoff because it's being able to recharge in these Cultex. And there's also proposed 2 additional Cultex near the pool. And those are for sump pumps if needed for the basement, okay? And the water from the sump pump would go into these Cultex and then overflow into a level spreader. Now, Matt Popp, our environmentalist, looked at the level spreader, and he said it should be basically moved and placed so it's on the contour, consistent with the contour, so that Right now, it's in a slight downhill, and water would actually tend to go down to the bottom end of it. We want it perpendicular to what we'd call the fall line. And that way, the water will just migrate and sheet flow into the wetlands. And it will also allow us to move the level spreader so it's 20 feet from the wetlands. Currently, the level spreader ends about 10 feet from the wetlands. So that will take care of, there was a good suggestion by Matt. We're happy to incorporate that into the plan and any stipulation for an approval. The house, I know there was a question about what our first floor elevation is, and let me just see. Oh, the house, for the record, is served by town water and town sewer, and those lines are marked in the front. This is the water line right here. I'll blow it up a little bit so you can see. There's the water line leading to the house, and this is the line to the sewer. So we're not affecting any trees, and it's, they're designed to serve, so we're not having impact with water or sewer on the property. The first floor of the house is at elevation 171.5. Rick had conveyed that you wanted that information. You also wanted the basement. The basement elevation is 159.45. So we're about 12 feet below the first floor, which is a couple of feet above the grade. The existing grade is 170 on what would be the east or southeast side of the property, and it's 174 on the northwest side of the house over here. So there's about a 4-foot drop as you go from one side of the house to the other. The other thing I didn't mention is that our grades are such that we have 107, we're at elevation 172 in this corner of the property in the front, and it drops gradually to 162 in the rear. So you've got a 10-foot drop over 300 feet. And so it's gently sloping, it's not precipitous in any way, and those who walk it can see that it basically sheds, water will sheet flow towards the northwest where the wetlands are located. And that's as it should be. And our site design has taken advantage of that, so that that's why the cul-de-sacs are where they are, and why we have the level spreader for the sump pumps, if we need it. Let me just see what else. We're proposing a new pool and patio in the back, and we've got a much more gracious backyard by moving the house closer to the front. I'll scale this back so you can see a little more. I'll bring it up a little bit more. So we've moved the house forward. Let me see. Now, Wayne, our engineer's report indicates that these, I've already talked about that. The cul-de-sacs here allow for renovation of the water, reducing particulate thermal modulation, so that the hot water from the hot roof will be reduced in temperature by the time it gets into the wetlands. And it also and it will also recharge groundwater, which is all in, environmental values that you guys support. So we're designing it to recognize and implement those objectives. There are a series of hay bales here if we need it for dewatering the foundation. We do have soil and erosion controls around the perimeter. There's a single row of silt fence here, and when we get to this area near the wetlands, it's a double row, up until we come to the western side, or eastern side, southeastern side, where it's a single row of silt fence. And that is all the protection that we think we'll need, because really there's very little construction activity close to the wetlands. We just have the cul-de-sacs and this, and a little bit of the apron of the pool that are within the upland review area. I'm going to turn to the landscape plan. These are details which, if you have questions, we're happy to address. I'll ask Wayne to address those. But the planting plan was submitted. It was prepared by Matt Pop, and Matt's here to discuss what he's proposed in terms of the improvements to the site. And Matt, if you want to use the, I think you're going to, okay, you'll.
Good evening, Matthew Papa, landscape architect, professional wetlands scientist from Environmental Land Solutions. I prepared the landscaping plan, which you see up on the screen. Just briefly, let's move down. Oops.
Use the mouse.
Yep, yep. Okay, there's a water course just off the site, kind of doesn't run parallel to the rear property line, kind of comes from here, kind of across to this point. The site back here is wooded, where the wetland is. This area of the wetland has a fairly good tree canopy, but there's a thin ground cover or understory layer of shrubs. So on the plan, most of this area right here is planted with shrubs. If you go to the northwest portion of this site, this area, it's fairly open, so that's where there's more trees. There's actually 4 shade trees proposed there. There's a shade tree over here. So that's why the trees are here. And just almost in the wetland area, maybe just outside, right here, there's a small debris pile, which we're proposing to be removed. As we kind of moved towards the front of the site, right where the underground detention galleries are. Just down the slope of that, we have shrub plantings that will, aid to hopefully, if there's any runoff from those areas, those shrubs will aid in treatment of that. Between this house and the house next door, we have some evergreen native trees, mainly American holly. Moving forward, but in the streetscape, there's one large tree, probably the specimen tree in the site, the most significant tree is just off the property line. That's probably the most valuable tree, I think, on the property. So we do have tree protection around that. In the rear of this site, we also have tree protection around some of the sugar maples here and here. The trees right through here, I didn't propose any tree protection around those. Those are Norway maples. If we want the tree protection around them, we could install those. But again, that's a non-native invasive species. So usually I don't try to save those, but since they're close to the wetland, I just propose them to kind of remain as is, but with no tree protection. I did review where the sump pump is discharged. It's into right here to a underground detention or retention galleries. In my letter, I did have a mistake, actually. I was proposing, right where that level spreader, right where those galleries discharge, it's right about here in the level spreader. And I was recommending that they get moved over here because it's further from the wetlands, but it's about the same distance from the wetland. But there's a longer flow, over surface flow, from the area I'm proposing from here across the wetland, kind of to this corner of this site. So the stormwater, any runoff from that area would get more treatment, maybe more infiltration by shifting that level spreader from this area about 50 feet to the east, in this area right here. If there ever was from the sump pump water that went into the level spreader and it was a concern, it was like it was noticeable, between the level spreader and these trees right here, there is an area where we could probably put in, a little narrow swale or depression, which could collect the runoff. So maybe like a mini, wouldn't want to call it a rain garden, but a small basin that would ensure that the runoff wouldn't, from that level spreader, wouldn't cause an impact down slope. But again, that would be just I probably would do that after the fact, you know, if there ever was a concern in the future. So I think what we have here is a project that will not, you know, adversely impact the wetlands. You know, again, the house before was right in this area here. We're moving it quite a bit further up front. We have the landscape plantings, which will, you know, increase the habitat value of the site, uptake nutrients. Actually, one other thing I forgot to mention is right along the edge of the plantings, we have a boulder row right through here. So land to the south will be maintained, and the land to the north will be left in a natural state. So, again, if there's any questions, I'll be, you know, happy to answer them.
Just one,
Yep.
were you gonna treat invasives?
This area over here, there was quite a bit of porcelain berry in that area. It's very tough to get rid of. You know, we could make an attempt to get rid of that for maybe a year or two, but it was fairly dense. So I wasn't proposing it at this stage, but if, you know, it's tough to get rid of, you know, you have to probably, you know, it's not an annual like mile a minute where you could pull the plants out and they come out of the ground easily. This would have to be done by, you know, hand. They're tough to get out. But if you wish, we could have that added to the landscape plan. Again, it's mainly kind of in this area over here. Actually, I think there might have been some a little bit further back too.
Anybody have a question from the commission? Or
Actually, Matt, I got a question for you.
Sure.
I'm looking at the plan that Wilder passed out this evening, and I'm looking at your drawing, which shows the encroachment of the pool over the upland review area.
Mm-hmm.
Are those the same?
No, the architect did a different calculation, and I didn't, so his depiction of the 50-foot setback is different from what Matt's showing. And
Let me ask my question, Wilder. Okay, so maybe you want to take the podium if you're going to answer the question. So I'm looking at this blue line here of the pool, and I'm looking at the upland review area. And this, I could be getting old, this does not look like that. Am I wrong?
I'm sorry?
The northern outline of the pool, crossing over the upland review area to the north, where the blue lines intersect the red line,
So,
does not look like the plan that Matt is
so
speaking
when
to.
you do the offset from a point, like if you just offset on a computer 50 feet, a lot of times surveyors, the line is jagged over here. But actually, 50 feet from here, you have to have a radius, which is right through here. So it comes right 50 feet. So so if you measure the distance on this plan, it's greater than 50 feet. So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Am I the only person seeing
No, I
this?
had the same question.
Regardless of scale or distance, the shapes don't match, right?
If we go back, Wilder, to the
This is
plan that you submitted, there's a green and a red line.
Right.
And they're not running parallel to each other, inclusive of that
because you got 50
jag
feet
that
here.
relates to the
I-
terrace area.
Let me take a step further. In this photograph, or excuse me, in this plan, it looks like the pool is materially more out of the upland review area. And this drawing looks like the pool is more in the upland review area.
Correct.
So which one are we supposed to be looking at?
I would trust this one and the engineer's plan. And
why are
if
we
you want,
looking-
we're more than
So-
happy.
So why did you pass this one out?
this one is,
Because we got it this afternoon, we asked the architect to do this to show the difference, and after we submitted it, we realized there's a difference. And they're inconsistent
So if you,
in,
I'm sorry, so if you noticed there was a difference, why'd you pass this out to us?
because I'd already put it in the other one, and in the
So this is
presentation.
garbage.
This is garbage.
Okay.
So the upland review area,
Just a second, please. Rick, for the record then, this handout
Yeah.
is to be ignored.
Correct.
Okay, and it should be noted as part of the file
Please,
to be ignored so that we don't have,
we don't have an inconsistent
yeah.
record. I want to rely on what Wayne, our engineer,
Good point.
and Matt have supplied.
Okay.
The
Good
purpose
catch.
of that
Good
was
catch.
actually to highlight the old house, the new house,
Mhm.
and what had happened in terms of setbacks. Apologies.
No, but I just want to make sure that the record is clear as to what the applicant is proposing.
Absolutely.
And so,
Yeah.
so when you get your permission, you don't say, well, was it this or that? Okay. Matt, thank you.
thank you.
I have one question. It's my question I ask for everybody that builds a new house. What's the, did you test the water levels in the soils?
Yes.
And at what point is?
Wayne, do you want to address that? And I think that may be on this report. Yeah, the details, I think, are the next. Why isn't this working? No, that's not, no, why isn't this working? Why is, I'm sorry. Technical difficulties. Wayne, I don't, I have, you know what I have? You wanna try that and see? The drainage detail plan is here. I don't know if you can read
I
that.
cannot read that, no.
It's,
No, the question is very simple. Did you do perk tests?
Yes, we did do so.
Oh,
Just for
okay,
the
I'm
record,
sure
Wayne
you did.
Danzo, Fairfield
Wayne, I'm
County
sure you
engineer.
did.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the question is, and it's very simple. The basement's at 159.45,
Correct.
okay? What's the water table?
It was 26 or 28 inches down, from what I can recall. I unfortunately can't.
So you're 26 or 27 inches below. the
Existing
ba-
grade.
Below, okay, below existing grade or below the basement level?
Below existing grade.
So, does that mean water's gonna be seeping in this 24/7?
Much of the basement would be in
A
water.
pool.
Correct. Yes.
All right, so that means that you're gonna have some pumps running 7/24?
During the, and this was done during the wet season. During the wet season, it will be much water there, so yes. And
Oh,
we are providing the.
Okay, then I have a question as to the capacity of the Coltex, because you're gonna be running these things, and they're gonna have an electrical bill. So you're gonna be pumping this water into the Coltex. Coltex have that capacity? Does, because you're doing it 7/24?
Yeah, we customarily provide usually a pair or so of Caltex, as we're doing here for this type of application. It will have a net effect of, basically pumping to the level spreader during the more wetter seasons. You would need more chambers to prevent that from happening.
Is there anything else feeding the Coltex?
No, they're dedicated just to the footing drains.
All right.
How many more Coltexes would be needed to handle that capacity in normalized conditions?
We would have to look into that, but several more, just guessing, 15, I don't know.
Can I add one thing on that? Is that a reason why you're not doing the entire roof going down into, discharging into?
No, that's a separate system. That's for the stormwater management, and we're not doing the entire roof. Well, we don't need to do the entire roof. We can get it below. By the way, we're getting this below. We used a fresh meadow approach, so we're getting this below a vacant lot as far as the net runoff. And we are collecting the entire driveway. because we're sort of forced to collect the entire driveway. By doing that, we don't need to collect. the
Through
entire
storm
road
drains.
For stormwater retention, correct.
Okay.
I have you on record already, but I can just state your first and last name.
Sure, it's Wayne Devanzo.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had those right.
Okay, does any other commissioner have a?
I actually had a question for Wilder.
Okay,
So Wilder, in your introduction, you said that you moved the house as far away from the regulated area as possible?
But actually, we could have moved it 5 feet closer, because we have a 50-foot front yard setback.
Right.
And we're 55 feet.
Right.
I mean, we moved it 100 feet. The front of the house is moved
So based on your
102 feet.
Right, based on your comment, my question then was, what's the front yard, the minimum front yard setback?
50
Okay.
feet, yeah, so,
All right. That was it.
okay, great. I did have a summary sheet, you've got it in front of you in the last bullet point. Sorry, second to last. Our proposal offers many benefits from the prior conditions. We're protecting the wetlands. We're identifying them. We're enhancing them. We moved the house 100 feet further from the wetlands. We have better water treatment and recharge when there was none. We've mitigated tree removal by planting native trees. And all construction activity is outside of the wetlands and outside of the upland review area, except for the Caltex and possibly a portion of the pool apron. I believe the pool apron is entirely outside of the 50-foot regulated area, based on Wayne and the plans that we submitted, but when I looked at the others, it looks like we're just missing it, the corner. We're just missing that upland review area. So these are all improvements from the prior conditions, and we've got a really good landscaping plan that is going to protect the wetlands and prohibit activities in the wetlands with the boulders. So enforcement becomes easy, and there's just a lot of benefits to this plan.
is there any commission member who would like to?
Yeah, I've got, so in the application request here, you're talking about proximity to wetlands and water courses. And what's been bothering me is I've gone out there twice and I've not been able to see the northern boundary marked. And we know there's an intermittent water course there. It's right there. I can't tell if it's on the property, it's not on the survey. When we do projects like this, even if it's not on the property, it's nice to have it noted because the water's flowing towards us. So I would have liked to have been able to positively identify that was not on the property. It hasn't been talked about except once, that there is a water course right there. And so I'd like to see that amended, that that's shown at least on the map, and I'd like to be able to go back there and actually see myself that that's the property line and that's sitting over on the other side, because there's no mark.
I assume the surveyor noted it if it was on the property and he wasn't intending to show issues off the property, just as he didn't show the specimen tree that is in the Lee Warden Road right-of-way that Rick pointed out and is really substantial, and Matt noted it and put a tree protection around it in his landscape plan. So if you want that as a condition of an approval, we're happy to do that.
Either take it out of the application about wetlands and water courses, because
I'm sorry, I didn't, I was not involved in the initial presentation. It's an omission on my review after you guys decided to go to a public hearing, so.
Anything else, Bill?
no.
No.
Yeah, do you want, Sean?
I just want to.
State your name, please.
State your name and address,
Sorry,
please.
Sean Shea, I live at 135 Leroy Avenue. I'm going to be building the house for Jasenia. I just want to tell you about the basement. There's a couple things we can do where it doesn't have to have pumps going on 24/7. You could put a membrane in the bottom of the foundation underneath the slab. You could put gravel, 4-inch pipe, get it out of there, so it'd be essentially it becomes like a a pool, you know, so it doesn't keep going in. The other thing we can do is underneath the family room, that can become a crawl space, so, which is in the back of the house where most of the water would accumulate. The other thing I want to point out is that water course you're talking about is not on the property at all. It's on the neighbors in the back's property.
But how close is it to the property line? And that, it would have been nice to see that.
Yeah, I
That's one of the
guess.
things, when
If
you
you,
go out
I'm
there-
happy to meet you out there and I can walk it with you.
I'll take your word for it, but
Yeah, it's not
nice
on the
to see that.
property. And I would just like to also stress that any wetlands that are on this property, it's not like there's frogs, it's deer that are, you know, it's not, and I don't want to minimize the wetlands, but they're not that significant. Most of the rain that you see, the puddling, if you've been out there, is from where we tore the house down. And we're moving the house forward where it's higher, so there'll be less water when we hit, if we hit any. And by code, you have to put footing drains around it and everything else, and we're just gonna go over the top to stop any water from going, because nobody wants to pay the electric bill. Thank you.
Hey, Sean, excuse me a second.
Sure.
I think you presented some very interesting alternatives to mitigate the sump pumps and going. That said, I'm not sure where I come out. Okay, is the applicant committing to doing, because they can go as is, they can put the sheeting like you suggested, or putting the crawl space in underneath the family room, et cetera.
The slab.
Excuse me, thank you. I'm not sure what is being proposed. Wilder, maybe you can clarify this?
I can help with that. Nobody wants a wet basement. It's the worst thing in the world. Jasenia doesn't want it, nobody wants it. So once we start digging and we realize, they have to dig the footings anyway, you gotta go down. Do we have to, we hit water, we're gonna put a crawl space in. We probably will have to put the membrane in. It's more of an expense that we don't have prices for.
Yep.
But Jasenia is prepared for that expense. She's already been pre-warned, we're already looking into that. So it's probably gonna happen, 99%. We don't want water in the basement. And if it's that bad, and I've done plenty of basements for 40 years, then you scratch it.
Okay, not just,
You get a partial basement, everybody wants a basement. I built a house at 108 Lee Warden down the road. Basements are sell. People want to throw their kids down there, so if they don't want them,
Lock the door.
They don't want them, nobody wants the mold. The mold's a big thing, so we're gonna address whatever situation unfolds.
Okay. Walter, did you want to address that?
I know I did.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, so, Sean, obviously you build a lot of houses in town, you know what you're doing. That goes without question. I'm still come back and go A, B, C combination?
Well, I think we'd like to be able to put the sump pump in with the level spreader. And if our engineer determines that's gonna be running 24/7, we're clearly not gonna do that. We're gonna have to put a membrane in and have the pump wherever it is located higher up in some way, right, Sean?
Correct.
And if it looks like we need to, we're happy to have a crawl space under the family room, which reduces the amount of,
Water going out.
water going out.
Mhm.
But the primary focus is, I think, to get a basement under the front portion of the house. That's this portion, which would include a portion of the garage. This is the garage right here. The kitchen is behind it with the breakfast room and family room here. It's this front portion, I think, that we really need to have full garage. That's what we'd like to have.
Okay.
And so we're sort of, you have to trust a guy who's done business and built houses 40 years in town that he'll do the right thing here. And I think you can rely on Sean's word here.
Okay. Michael, you want to say something?
Yeah, two quick questions. Bill, was your sensitivity to prior applications where, let's say, there's a substantial water course just off the property line and
That
the
was not
surveyor,
included, yeah.
and the surveyor doesn't mark a
Yeah,
regulated
we
area?
had to put them in.
Right, so for example, on this application, I haven't visited the site. If there appeared to be a intermittent water course, that would potentially be an additional encroachment or more of an encroachment of the regulated area? Or just,
no.
just nice to know?
It's not a, as he said, it's not a first-class wetlands we're starting with, and it is an intermittent water course, but when they're putting in an application and when you see it's so close to or on the
You
property
can't
line,
ignore it.
it's something that we need to look at the first time and just make sure we're familiar with that site.
Right.
And when I don't see it here, and then if you don't go out there, then it's like, what's that? So I think we've been asking people to put anything, ponds, everything else very close to the line on their applications because it's what we're doing here. It affects those water bodies.
And then the second question, maybe for Wayne, is there a capacity to daylight the footing drain? Or does everything have to be run by a sump pump?
Yeah, no, I mean, you would need a sump pump, given the depth of the basement, so
Oh.
you're gonna be pumping up, and
I
I really would want it to go.
Are the sump pumps inside the foundation or outside? Do you have a main, is there a main sump pit outside the?
I intend it to be outside.
You put it outside, but there's enough gravity, I'm sorry, not to dismiss your engineering. Gravity goes that way. If you see the bottom left-hand corner of the property, there's plenty of room for a footing drain for gravity, so it doesn't have to go in. State code lets you do that too. So my feeling is that, yes, Wayne, there's plenty of pitch for a footing drain to have gravity. And if there is a sump pump, and if it's that much water, we usually put one outside below the footing and another one inside as a backup in case and everyone has a generator now. In case a generator fails or a pump fails, there's always a backup with an alarm, 2 alarms.
So, Chris, I'm sorry, so,
Sean.
I apologize.
All right.
I know
Chris
your name
was
is
there.
Sean, sorry.
Senator
George.
Safe.
Yes, George.
I'm thinking of a specific excavator named Chris. So are you saying that there is the capacity to daylight a footing drain on the property?
My feeling is yes, and I talked to the architect about that actually today.
Okay, so then you got yourself an A and a B question. A is, where are you gonna daylight? And B, why is it not on the plan? Because C, it makes sense that you would want that over sump pumps. So why aren't we talking about that?
I'm not an engineer, I just you put me in a spot here. But
you're an EPC.
We talked to we went over that with the architect today. And the architect, his name is Scott Racis, and we felt that all that gravity would go to the left corner of the property, the lowest corner of the property, which is not where that water course that you're speaking of is. It's on the following, you're facing the front of the house, the lowest point to me is to the left-hand corner. And that's why he has those Coltex there. And by the way, not to, if there is sump pump needed, we had a discussion where there's only 2 more chambers needed for the Coltex system, is it not? 6 or 7. Well, that's what we said. Anything else?
Well, I mean, the daylight piece makes sense, and then there's the
It
last part.
definitely makes sense.
Procedurally is for approving an
Forget the
application.
pumps.
Now, we'd have to submit a plan that shows where it's gonna be, and we don't have that yet. So,
I would gladly submit that to the building office, or
to-
anybody, or to
have
you
Rick
guys.
take a look at it.
But yeah, have Rick take a look at it.
We would really like to close this hearing
Yeah,
if possible.
I don't think that's a showstopper, is it?
We're out of the regulated area. Believe me, I don't want to get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning, my basement's flooded.
I'll let my fellow commissioners, I'm a little persnickety when it comes to procedure and documentation, but this was an.
Let me talk to you about that. That was
No,
submitted today.
just let me just
Sure.
finish my sentence to my fellow commissioners here. Rick, again, Eric, I'll default to everybody else, but I think we just need to have like a set of documents that are all lined up and stamped, and all the plans look the same, and that's the package that gets approved.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, technically, we're out of the regulated area, but we're in the regulated area when you're creating a flow going into the regulated area.
Right.
which is what a sump pump would do.
It was the architect's idea to draw that today, just to show you, to emphasize that the house and the pool and anything else, except for the Coltex system, is out of the regulated area. That was the reason for that. And to show you where the house was, and that we moved it as close, 5 feet less, 55 feet from the road, which is higher ground. And we did everything possible to keep it out of that regulated area. So that's what that was for. Sorry,
I'm not
backfire.
dwelling, I'm trying to like end my time on this. I'm not dwelling on this map. I think to your point is, if the engineer has Plan A and the builder and architect have a different scenario, then my question would be, okay, does the system daylight to sheet flow? Does the system daylight to Coltex? If you're not going to force main feed, if you're not going to pump water through it, are the Coltex sized appropriately? I mean, I think generally, as it relates to the building department, the zoning department, and EPC, we need to have a complete set of plans for an application to be approved. Procedurally speaking, that's it.
Well, and I would also think the building inspector would want to have the plans so that they can make sure it's been done according to plan.
Well, or we would need to approve those plans.
Right.
Procedurally, regardless.
Yeah.
We're happy to submit new plans for Rick and the building office to see, which we have to do anyway.
But Wayne has to stamp it.
He'll stamp it. We'll go out there and he'll stamp it because,
But Wayne hasn't drawn anything yet based on what you've described.
look, all I'm telling you is that I believe that there's enough flow down below. And
I agree with
if-
you.
If it's not true, then we'll rely on Wayne's Coltex system to put the extra chambers necessary. Either way, it's gonna have a membrane if it's needed, or a crawl space, and/or 2 sump pumps. So what's the difference? It's all gonna happen. Whatever's needed is gonna happen. If we don't need a membrane, if we don't need if we can go to gravity, then why are we submitting plans that would
Because we
show?
don't have a plan that shows gravity.
Yeah, because we don't have the
We
plan
don't
that
have the plan
shows
that shows
gravity, and we're
Yes.
approving a
Alright,
process here that we need to have something in front of us to approve.
How about this, approve the plan that shows no gravity, and then we'll go back to Rick and say, look, Rick, this is how it is.
If we need to, we would come back and amend to show gravity.
I mean, I do get what you're saying, there's a bit of a chicken and the egg, and, you know, you got an engineering plan, and then you have a construction plan, and a lot of times, real conditions divert from what the engineer says.
Exactly.
Get that completely. And I think what bears for me a little bit is, I think the credibility of this team is very high for me. So I think that really lends me to give some flexibility to the process here, because I think you all know what you're doing. But at the same time, we need to, I think, get something as you're saying.
Could I
To
suggest?
play devil's advocate, what if Wayne disagrees with the architect?
So
and
let's do
Sean?
this. Let's assume we're going to put the sump pumps and the Coltex in for the sump pumps. Because that's a plan that's before you, you can approve it. We have the level spreader that's gonna get relocated. That's the plan. That's actually a more expensive plan and less desirable from Jasenia's point of view. She doesn't wanna be paying that bill. So if we can get an approval along those lines, and as site conditions indicate that we can do a gravity feed, we would come back to get approval of that modification to the plan, which I would hope could be handled perhaps administratively by staff without a public hearing, after referencing you guys on this. But provided Wayne stamps it, it becomes pretty straightforward, I think. But obviously, you guys would need to review it. And that would be hopefully on an administrative basis after we've gone through the approval process. I think that is a way to split the baby.
Hey, Rick, how do you feel about that?
I mean, we always like to have, you know, one set of plans that you're voting on in conditions, but if you choose to do it as a condition of approval, then so be it. You know, I think there's a couple little things that, like adding the invasives back, removing the invasives, adding that to the planning plan. One thing I did note, the tree is to be removed, to be kept, should be consistent on
It is
all the
consistent
plans.
now. It's
now
24
consistent.
trees, for the record. They're shown on Matt's plan, they're
Yeah.
shown on Wayne. We have 24 trees being removed.
And so I think that we've come down to the sump pump in how far in groundwater, he seems like he has some options. I suppose you could do it as a condition, you can ask up front and do it all at one fell swoop, or you could do it as a condition.
Being the sump pump, everybody on this commission has their own
Yep.
hang-ups, mine is sump pumps. And so, I'd be comfortable with you coming back, giving a conditional approval, but you coming back to Rick and, saying, hey, you three, the applicant and the engineer, et cetera, and you, Shauna, are copacetic, that you agree that this is what we can do. Okay, I don't think that's, but I don't wanna hold the process up for that. Okay, for me, I wanna sit there and say, hey, that there should be one consistent set. I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't want one consistent set to the building office, EPC, B and C, et cetera. And that you can come back to Rick before the next meeting and say.
Well, the issue we have is I don't think we're gonna know until we start construction. And at that point, we will know whether we can daylight the water. And if we're doing that as part of the process, we'll come back and amend. And I think that's the logical way, not to try and do it between now and October.
All right, well, let me think about that
Let me
one.
jump on this. I know what Wilder wants to do, okay, that's clear. But the engineer needs to draw a plan, needs to stamp it. And if Wilder's saying, hey, we think we can daylight, okay, then we should be able to, the engineer should quickly be able to come up with a plan that says that, yes, that can be done.
I mean, you have a plan, we submitted.
The purpose of EPC isn't, I understand we're problem solving, and I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
beat you guys up, I'm not. Just procedurally, I'm trying to get through something here. The purpose of EPC isn't for the builder, the engineer, and the attorney to come to EPC and re-engineer the plans in front of the commission and hold up everybody else here in the room waiting for their applications to be heard. So, I'm trying to get in and get out of this thing. I think.
No, I'm there, and I wanna push along, because we still haven't heard from the public, okay? And, let's hear from the public first, and get their input, so if there's no more commission members,
Can it be put in as a condition, because they're saying that they're not going to be able to tell until the construction is underway. Can't we put it in as a condition that if this, then this, and if, do you know what I'm
See, I
saying?
disagree with that. because
No, I'm
when you-
asking, I'm
when
just
you build
asking.
When you build a house and you're an engineer, you can see what the bottom of the footing is for the house, what the actual average grade is. And Wilder, in the beginning of his introduction, said that which is why I asked the question, is there's a 10-foot change of elevation over 300 feet, where the elevation is the highest at the front of the house and lowest all the way down to the wetland.
Right.
So I would, if I was an engineer would be able to say, yes, we can daylight the footing drain, ergo, this is our plan. That's not the plan that was presented. That's why we're having this conversation. So I just think we're getting in murky waters on making conditions to approve plans that aren't stamped.
Could I just interject something that might make this all kind of moot?
please.
I don't think it can be daylighted, to be blunt. I just don't agree, so.
So the plan stands as submitted?
It
that
does.
It will
And
not
I
be
would also say,
daylighted?
even if we did do it by gravity, it would still be 2 chambers and a level spreader anyway, whether you pump to it or gravity it. So it really wouldn't affect the plan
Yeah.
in either of that.
Do you have to increase the number of level, before, did you say you have to increase the number of chambers in this system?
If we were pumping and if we wanted, during extreme conditions to not overflow to the level spreader, yes, we would have to add. a significant number of chambers, and, you know, I'm trying to avoid that because of the proximity of the wetlands.
Well, maybe that then sends us down the path of how much of the basement is actually finished. And determining the water level with respect to the front or the back of the dwelling.
Yeah, actually, that won't really
Solve
matter
it.
either. It's still gonna be, the basement's still at the level that it's at, and we still, and again, the water's still at the level it's at, so really fine.
Just 10 seconds, how did you choose the elevation of the basement? Because I see that you have a trench drain in front of the garage, so you're actually going down from the driveway to
architect
the
gave it to
garage
us?
level.
The elevation of the basement, that we said?
On what?
Did you say the elevation of the basement?
Yes.
It's from the architect. It's-
So is there, I mean, at some point in the future, would be a possibility that you raise the basement level in the house, in the driveway, and get rid of the trench drain?
Well, we need the trench drain from the driveway for the stormwater. We have to collect the driveway, and that's really the only way to do it. The elevation of the basement's negotiable as far as I'm concerned.
So I've just talked to Sean, and he believes we could raise the basement if we needed to, at least 2 feet. It's 12 feet from the first floor to the floor of the basement. I mean, that's pretty generous.
Yeah,
And I don't think we
that's a
need
big
that
basement.
much
That's huge.
by any stretch.
Well, Sean, the idea is that you have room to run mechanical on the ceiling of the basement without reducing the height of the basement.
Correct. Everybody wants an 8-foot basement, so.
You run
7.6
ductwork around.
is okay. But I'll tell you, I go back to engineers all the time after something's approved, and I say, look, this isn't really working, can we do this? And they say yes or no. Let me run it by Rick or whoever. Happens all the time, we're building.
Sure.
Craig's out here, I just ran something by him on the Tweedy property that we're building. Can we move this? We want to save this tree. We don't want to do this. He says, let me look at it, let me ask Jeremy.
That happens all the time, yeah.
Jeremy
Right.
says, yes, it's a done deal. Costs a little bit more, but we save a little bit more, but sometimes you just don't know until you get your hands in there. That's the way it is. But it happens all the time where you have a question with an architect, with a person on anything. Can we change this a little bit? Usually you have to, and for obvious reasons, for common sense reasons. That's all we're trying to do.
And I would submit you have a set of stamp plans which you can approve, and I believe. And we can amend those depending on how site conditions evolve. And we will, if there's a better way of doing things.
Yeah, I'm not feeling comfortable, for me personally, approving on the basement size, height at this point, given what I'm hearing.
You mean reducing it? Reducing.
To approve as rendered at this
Oh.
point. Yeah, so to reduce it would get me to another spot. Because it sounds like there's gonna be a continuous flow because we're just going too deep.
I think we could reduce it 2 feet easily. And I think if you want to make that condition, that the basement is reduced to no more than,
So that the sump pump's not running constantly.
correct. So by reducing the basement, you reduce, nobody wants to put 12-foot walls in anyway. I mean, that's like the Berlin Wall.
I just talked to Jasenia, and she's prepared to raise the basement 2 feet from what the architect specified.
Okay.
And commit that if it's impractical to have a basement under the
Back.
family room, that back area, we won't have one, we'll have a crawl space.
Okay.
That's commitment, and it's all depends on site conditions.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you have commitments from a reputable team that are prepared to move forward, and we'd really like to close the hearing and get an approval so we can start construction before Christmas. If we go another month, it'll be November, and, you know, it's just, we need the time, we need to start if we could. And,
Okay. I'd like to get members of the public. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this application? You would? Please.
Yes. State your name for the record, please.
Yeah, I'm Keith Abbott. I live at 85 Lee Warden Road, right next door. My question is, when you stand on Lee Warden Road and you look at where you're proposing the house, your driveway, are you excavating all that land in the front? Or, because, I mean, that's straight up stone wall, and then it goes down again with the house there,
So
so.
this is, well, my computer's not.
That's right. So right here, when you stand on Lee Warden Road, are you gonna be like excavating all this land out of the way here?
No.
Which would then you're gonna have a driveway that's gonna go pretty much straight up from the road.
No, this driveway.
Or are you cutting through?
You're saying here, this driveway?
Right here, yeah. So, I mean, because my driveway's right here, so if you start taking this away, is the flow of water gonna now start coming to my property?
No, all the water will go that way no matter
But
what.
are you gonna be cutting land here to make this driveway?
If that driveway actually goes in, which
It's gonna be,
I'm trying to talk her out of it, she's pretty much amenable to
I
that.
just know the height of it. I mean, I stand out there.
You're right.
I know where my mailbox is, and I know where
This
you're
is-
proposing where the house is gonna be.
This was the architect's drawing, and we're trying to get rid of that anyway. Just use one driveway to save some money and just have it look nicer. So I'm sure Jasenia would make a commitment just to get rid of this, because we've already talked about it, just to cut the cost in half. I don't want to go over there, it's crazy. She doesn't either, but the architect, made it look a little bit more elaborate than yours. Jasenia, right? You want to just make a commitment now, just to knock that part off?
Where you,
Always
so
like
you were
to
gonna
have
ultimately just be in the original.
a plan that
correct,
addresses
and then just
all
come
your
in and this is the
concerns.
call.
Yeah,
I
turn
always like to
around,
have a
whatever,
plan
come
that
back out.
addresses all your concerns.
So that the,
Because that's a steep elevation from where you were proposing, or from that architect. Yeah, so that is possible design.
Okay, Mr. Abbott, you obviously got their attention. As far as EPC is concerned, it's well without, it's not within our area of regulation. And quite frankly, this commission can't, I mean, you could talk to Wilder and the applicant and talk about that. For this specific commission, it's out of, it's
Yeah,
not within our
you're water
regulation
and
area.
wetland, I get all that, I just.
Okay, so now you got their attention, you can
we're
have a
happy
nice
to work
conversation
with
with,
Yeah.
and it seems clear, your concern is going to be addressed by changes to the driveway.
I just wanna make sure that, look, we lived through Superstorm Sandy, all those houses, all around there. I don't know about Bill's house, but all the houses behind Bill and back on, down on Old Oak, they were full of water, everybody's full of water. We didn't have a drop of water in my house, I never had a drop, never have, I've been there since '09. I just don't want anything changing that's somehow gonna, all of a sudden, water ends up in my property, and then I've been through the worst, and I don't have a drop. I'm like one of the only ones in town, so I wanna make sure
Yeah.
that it's gonna stay that way, so.
I think we're the low point with the wetlands here, between where we are and where your house is.
Right.
So I don't think that's gonna happen, but that's.
But I know there's a flow, because there's a drain ditch in the, right by the driveway too, and there's water flowing under there all the time. You can hear it. So I just wanna make sure, again, that no water's gonna get, that this part of the property up at the, what is that, the southwest corner, gets constructed in such a way that.
We've got your point, and they've taken note of it.
Perhaps amend,
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Public hearing, right? So.
No, it's a public hearing.
Yeah, I wanna
Yeah,
make sure.
and we encourage discussion.
We're happy to hear it.
Okay,
I'm
we
glad to
encourage
work with you,
discussion.
but I just wanna-
I think Jasenia sent your letter, happy with
Yeah,
it. That's good.
Yeah, no, I don't wanna work with you and all that, I just wanna make sure I'm not gonna entertain
All right, thank you, Mr. Abbott. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Going once, anybody else? No, okay, thank you, members of the public. Where do we go from here?
Maybe have Wilder summarize how you see a vision to us to getting to
Okay.
an approval.
So, we have stipulated first that we will raise the basement 2 feet from the 159 elevation, 159 plus elevation to 161, I think it's 0.45. We have stipulated that if the site conditions indicate it's appropriate to not put a basement under the family room or the kitchen and garage, that's what will happen. It'll be a crawl space. We do want the basement under the front portion of the house. We have a plan before you that shows sump pumps that would lead to Cultex, that would lead to a level spreader. That level spreader will be modified per Matt's comments so that it's perpendicular to the fall line and a little further from the wetlands. And that will allow water to flow in a sheet flow into the wetlands, which minimizes impact. We have, let me just think if there's any, we will remove invasives if required. The poisonberry, we'd like to limit that to 2 years. Efforts to remove invasive poisonberries really hard to get away, or get rid of, I understand, having learned that tonight. The plans otherwise are all consistent. The architect's plan, the engineer's plan and the landscape plan are consistent. We're removing 24 trees. We have tree protection shown in the landscape plan. Rick looked at that. He didn't have any comments on that. We are preserving the specimen tree that's in the right-of-way of Lee Warden Road that's in front of the right driveway entrance. And beyond that,
And we have the membrane and.
yeah, we are happy to commit to
construction
install.
Techniques to
We have
eliminate-
other techniques to alleviate the impact of sump pumps through membranes and other construction techniques, which Sean indicates are likely to be employed here. If you have the membrane, then I think you can lift the sump pump higher. Is that correct, Sean?
If you have a membrane,
Yeah.
let the water in, so you don't even need the sump.
So you don't need a sump pump. Ideally, we have to look at that, but that's where we are. And I think you have stamped plans that are consistent that you can approve going forward. And we're committed that if, as Sean says, we can daylight the water around the foundation, we'll come back to you with a plan for that. But that's really not part of, that's a commitment we're making. If you want to note that in any approval, we're happy to honor that stipulation, because that's the way we operate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Walter.
Did I miss anything, Rick?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, the first question is, do we want to keep the public hearing opening? The public hearing open, or should we close the public hearing? And Rick, I think from your perspective, are you comfortable that you can work with these documents as presented?
Well, I mean, of course, you just have to be satisfied from the impact perspective. If there's concerns about the driveway, there's concerns about the water going next door, if there's concerns about it flowing all the time, you can try to condition that and have reliance on staff and other professionals, or you could want to vote. I mean, I always like the cleanest plan possible that you're voting on, and all your issues being appropriately addressed. Do you close the hearing and leave the record open for the submission of revised plans that address those things? You can do,
Right.
you have like 3 options.
The one thing, Walter, I would do as a condition is that you, Sean Shea, have a conversation with Mr. Abbott to address his concerns, and that whatever the three of you conclude, get back to Rick to let him know about water running down his driveway or something like that.
I don't think that's gonna be a concern, because we're gonna eliminate that left driveway access.
Oh,
I
okay.
think there's no question of that, right, Jasenia? That's
Okay.
That's, we can stipulate the left driveway entrance will not be installed.
But it would, I mean, you can do, again, you can do a bunch of things. We could try to stipulate all this and then try to bring it all together. But you have to be comfortable with what you're gonna be voting on, because after this, there's no more information unless you leave the record open for something.
Well, you wanna leave the record open for,
You can close the hearing, but leave the record open for like an amended plan that addresses these items, such as, you know, the cleanest way is get a plan that adjusts the basement, that, does everything that you've talked about tonight, and you vote on a plan. That's the cleanest way. The alternative way is that you close the hearing and you leave the record open for the submission of revised plans that addresses all those things. Or you close the hearing and try to stipulate. But if you have concerns that are impactful.
I like the idea of closing the hearing, leaving the record open for further stipulation. We got the stipulation verbally here, but I think there could be some amendments to the plans that might be more specific, including, height of the basement and asterisk with respect to building conditions.
Gives them time to update their plans.
yeah.
And we're
So-
closing the hearing, so that helps while they're out.
Okay, so,
Makes them look.
okay, let's do this. Let's have a vote to close the, can I have a motion to,
I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing, PC 2023, closing the public hearing.
Second.
all in favor? What,
But withdraw the motion.
pardon?
I withdraw the motion and.
If you're gonna close, the hearing
and leave the
the record open for
open.
the submission of revised plans that hits all these highlights, is gonna reduce the reliance on sump pumps achieved by, looking at adjusting the elevation of the basement, eliminating basement and creating crawl space,
Membrane.
use of a membrane, and then looking at the revised driveway configuration. If you're eliminating, that reduces the amount of impervious surfaces, may, adjust. And ensuring that the abutter is not adversely affected by adjustments to the driveway or grading in that space. The necessity of additional Coltex to attenuate the impact of the sump pump, and then the treatment of invasives, which could be, even if you take it in a one-shot deal, it will certainly be helpful over not doing anything at all.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for 23-2023, but leave the record open for further submission of plans in accordance to the verbal stipulations that were provided before this committee today.
I'll second that. That work? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Public hearing closed. Okay, thank you.
You know that Ms. Rossi left, she had,
Yeah, I think
she had to
phone
head
calls.
home. Yep.
And Rick, the invasives would be removed by mechanical
Yes.
means, not.
Okay,
Yeah, I wrote that.
thank you.
Great, thank you. And all that whole way.
Yeah.
Because we were being,
Yep, that was a little too much. Okay,
did the right
the
work.
second public hearing tonight is EPC 25-23, 1 Ridge Acres Road, R. Weibel and A. Weibel, to construct a replacement single-family home, drive, pool, patio, drainage, and other related features proximate to the wetlands. Property lies along the north side of Ridge Acres, just east of Brookside Road, and is identified as map number 4, lot 37. The zone is R2, and it is approximately 1.0266 acres. Rick? Thank you, Greg.
Mr. Chairman, again, some housekeeping measures for this particular application. Note that the initial agenda for August 2nd, 2023 was posted out at the town clerk on July 27, 2023. The application was accepted by the EPC on August 2nd in regular meeting. In addition, the commission determined to hold a public hearing on this matter based upon a determination in the hearing would be in the public interest. The applicant was given notice of acceptance in the scheduling of the public hearing on August 7th. Correspondence describing additional information as presented by staff and with input from the commission was generated and submitted to the applicant on August 7th. The notice of public hearing was published in the Darien Times by EPC on August 24th and August 31st in accordance with the regulations. Hearing fee was received. Adjoining property owners, per the regulations, were noticed by the applicant, and those were the proper adjoining property owners within 100 feet on August 18th in accordance with the regulations. The applicant submitted additional information on August 22nd. The agenda for this hearing and regular meeting was posted with the town clerk on August 31st. And you'll note that we have generated an agenda summary report that was posted online on August 31st. The plans that were subject to, that are detailing the requirements or the full relevant scope of the project are listed in that agenda summary report. Pertinent issues in brief have to do with resource impacts, drainage impact, water quality, and sediment and erosion control, the value of the measures that have been proposed as mitigation to not only filter runoff and displace manicured surfaces and improve the overall conservation values of the property, have been, will be looked at as well. And the applicant has also provided a very brief summary of the alternatives they looked at as part of this review process. There is within that agenda summary report a description of the site characteristics and the project history that I'm sure that the applicant will go over, but if necessary, at your request, I can go over it as well. The wetlands are in the I think it's the eastern portion of the property, range from manicured surface to light to moderate woods, in association perhaps with a small water course that's in that area or drains in the southerly direction, the drainage way. Property's not in the flood zone, and again, there's quite a bit of history associated with the project, and it's the applicants before the various boards and commissions in order to get to this point before the commission. So I'm available to answer questions. We'll let the applicant move forward.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Scher. I'm a project engineer with Redness and Mead and an engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut. Joining us tonight, we also have the property owners, Robert and Annie Wiebel, and the project architect, Daniel Conlon. Our client is proposing to replace their 4-bedroom home. In 2021, it was destroyed in a house fire and then was recently demolished this spring. The new building footprint had to meet zoning setbacks and was pushed farther off the front yard. You have the structure with the garage. The existing pool is to remain, and a new pool house is proposed. The proposed driveway enters to the east of the house. Proposed drainage mitigation is provided via 2 Coltex systems and a crushed stone reservoir underneath the driveway. A waiver was originally requested to use existing conditions, but it was denied. So we did go back and redesign with meadow conditions. So everything has been revised to attenuate peak flows through the 50-year storm with meadow conditions. As part of our response to the comments, we did take a look at groundwater and its effect on the basement. Seepage was observed in the bottom of one test pit, and it's pretty clear that these sump pumps will run intermittently That was also agreed upon by Joe Connis, the peer reviewer, and he noted that in his comments we received today.
So, okay, sorry. Perk test, your perk test in relation to the perk test that indicates the water level is in relation to the basement level.
Yes, so we performed 5 test pits. Only one test pit, it was test pit number 4, had visible groundwater of about 44 inches below grade. And so that lined up with elevation 167, and our basement elevation is at 166. And so we don't anticipate much groundwater being an issue, so the pumps may run in wetter times, but intermittently.
Oh, okay, another question. City water?
It is on a well. We're
Oh,
maintaining.
it is on a well.
It's currently on a well. So, there's an existing septic system and well, both of which are going to be maintained.
So it's on septic also?
Correct.
Okay.
We are showing a replacement area in the northeast corner of this, or northwest corner of the site, to demonstrate that with all this disturbance, there is area available for a code-compliant replacement system in the event of a failure in the future. But the current system was installed in 2020 and was running effectively prior to the fire. Then the planting plan was also revised per the comments to establish a more defined buffer. The number of shrubs were doubled from 21 to 42, and those are used in between the boulder demarcation to help create a more defined limit of lawn, and also provide a greater buffer between the lawn area and the wetlands. New native grasses and ferns are proposed, as well as invasive species are to be removed along with any debris. This represents a improvement over existing conditions, just improving the buffer, improving the wetlands themselves. Not to mention, under existing conditions, none of the stormwater was receiving treatment, and now we're treating nearly all impervious surfaces while reducing peak flows. So it does represent an improvement to the wetlands and to the site itself. We did receive comments today from Joe Connis with Ty and Bond. 2 of them were related to the warrant a response. The first being regarding the well setback. If it had a yield rate above 10 GPM, we would need a 50-foot setback to the infiltration system. Per the state health code, we're below that at around 1 as an average, so the setbacks are not an issue. Also, he commented on the stone that we're modeling below the infiltration system. We just weren't showing it on purpose, and it was actually a conservative design note. The third note was also just commenting on our interpretation of the groundwater, and he also agreed with our assessment that it won't be an issue with the basement itself. We can prepare a response to be submitted, but I wanted to get it on the record today that we don't anticipate those comments having any impact on the plans themselves. And if you have any questions, I'm prepared to answer them.
Members of the commission?
In what month was the perk test performed?
Sorry.
Sorry. How about what season?
It was probably in June or May, so.
Okay, so spring, early summer. Okay. And the boulder demarcations, you mentioned that the plan was beefed up a bit, and that's with plantings and so forth. But the number of boulders is remaining the same. I think it was 6, and it's still 6. It's just that you're putting material in between the boulders.
It is currently 6. I do think that may have reflected a small increase.
Okay.
But if not, it did remain the same, but the proposed shrubs were intended to help.
Yeah, no, I saw it was dramatically increased, doubled, basically, yeah. Right now.
Oh, we can come back if you want.
Yeah, I thought I had something else.
Peter?
No questions.
I'm just curious, it sounds very interesting. What is a crushed stone gravel reservoir? And is that under asphalt or through a impermeable,
It's
a non-impervious surface?
It's basically what you would see under a porous asphalt, except we're putting it under an impermeable surface. So what we're doing is we're directing roof leaders to an area drain, which then is fed by two perforated pipes that feed into the crushed stone reservoir. So basically, water is allowed to fill this crushed stone reservoir before overflowing out of the area drain itself. So it serves the same purpose without having to deal with the porous asphalt and maintaining it.
And so like, on the planting plan, is that the area that leads into the garage?
Yes, it's kind of this flatter portion right here.
How big is, about how big is that? 20 by 20 or 30 by 30?
It's 700 square feet, so
Okay.
about,
No, that's okay.
not sure off the top of my head.
And like, how much crushed stone do you have underneath?
We have, we're at 167, and then grade above it ranges from 168.5 to 169.5. So at a minimum, we have a foot of crushed stone, and more when the grade starts to slope up.
That sounds very interesting. No, as a design, it sounds really interesting. And the plan looks great. I have no questions.
Okay, but I don't have any questions either. Carolyn, would you, I'd come back to you because you said you might have something else?
Yeah, the only other question I had was with regard to the infiltrators. It mentions that they are, the water quality of them before overflowing to the adjacent area drain. Is, a lot of times it's recharging the groundwater. Is that not the case here because the water table is high?
Oh, no,
So it's just basically holding it so it cools down?
all of these systems are, if you can, this is a high overflow, so it's designed to fill up basically to its maximum potential, and then we just need to give it an outlet so that it doesn't back up the tributary pipes.
Okay.
So what we like to do is place this area drain so it's right at grade, so as the system fills, so it's sized to infiltrate the water quality volume and even more, and we're not even taking into account how much water is infiltrating as they're filling.
Right,
But
right.
once you hit that point of them being full, water starts to bubble
Comes
out
out,
of the
yeah,
area drain
okay.
and then like follow natural flow paths.
Got it, thanks.
Okay. Any more commission members? Otherwise, I'll open it to the public. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak? Any other member of the public that would like to speak? Okay. No, I think this is a great plan. I feel for the owner, burned down house, my God. Everybody's nightmare. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And let's close the public hearing, okay?
Make a motion to close the public hearing on EPC 25-2023, One Ridge Acres Road.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Should have gone first.
Yeah, right.
First one wore you out.
Okay, moving on to our regular meeting, it's new business, it's EPC 27-2023, 11 Stony Brook Road South, G. DeLeo, to install a new generator and related features proximate to wetlands, watercourses, and special flood hazard areas. The property lies along the west side of Stony Brook South, approximately 575 feet south of Stony Brook Road, and is identified as map number 19, lot number 23. The zone is R1, and is approximately 1.02 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, this application has made its way to the agenda to acknowledge its receipt, to start the statutory time clock, and to allow the commission to decide if a public hearing is warranted to address the issues.
We're talking about a
that
new
are
generator,
proposed.
Pat, right?
And we're talking about a new generator that's in lawn adjoining the house. The property does have a reach of the Good Lives River, or Stony Brook.
Stony Brook, yeah.
And it also has area of riparian wetlands. It also has various layers of floodplain on the property. So the staff has already been to the site and is prepared to review the plans and to perhaps do it as an agent approval in the next several weeks. We'll have to look to see if there's any kind of de minimis information. But I also welcome, if you have been to the site, your comments that can be incorporated into.
Does any commission member have comments?
Just a quick one, and there's a second propane tank in the back, noted on the plan. You know, it's a minor thing. Curious if they're gonna keep that to put the 500 in the front. It's just something, it's not in the floodplain, but everything's close to Stony Brook when it roars, so if you didn't need it in the back, it'd be good to get rid of it. They do have a good buffer between Stony Brook and their lawn right now, so it's looking pretty good to me.
Anybody? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, EPC 28-2023, 42 Delafield Allen Road. J. Pitrack and S. Pitrack to install a new drainage system, grading, and other related features proximate to the wetlands, drainage associated with the construction of a new in-ground pool, septic system, and related facilities. The property lies along the west side of Delafield Allen Road, approximately 675 feet north of Red Coat Pass, and is identified as map number 64, lot number 100. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.20 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the applications before us is essentially for the drainage system and grading wall construction associated with a drainage system. But the true project is for the construction of a pool in the back of the property, along with a relocated and improved septic system. So there is quite a bit of site activity on the parcel that's being proposed.
That's all ledge too, right?
There's a lot of ledge on the property, rather than it has slope and it has other conditions, plus it also has wetlands on the property. But the encroachments that are currently being proposed are in the upland review area associated with a drainage system. Staff has been to the site, is prepared to generate a list of information with your input that would be necessary to move forward. Again, the application's made its way to the agenda to, again, acknowledge receipt, start the statutory time clock, and to make a determination if a public hearing is warranted or we do it under the regular meeting process. But I certainly do welcome comments that you may have as a result of your inspection, and there will be some additional comments about looking at some alternatives, and I know that the applicant has been, we've been engaged talking about certain things to perhaps reduce the reliance on a whole new drainage system, so that will be part of the discussion.
Yeah, I would encourage this person, because I happen to know this piece of property, to encourage them to take a look at reasonable and prudent alternatives. Okay, because that's, you know, it's on granite out. I mean, it's on granite out there. So I just can't imagine building, you know, either the jackhammers or the blasting or something to what has to happen here. And but anyway, that may not be within our area of expertise, but it certainly does affect the rest of the, you know, to take a look at the minimization of the drainage system. Yeah. Does any other commission member have a question or comment?
Bill does.
Always. I think they would probably give you a planning plan too, along that, since they're gonna be raising it up a couple of feet, 2 to 3 feet, with and then backfill behind it, where the cul-de-sac is gonna be.
There is a mitigation plan that does some planting and other improvements in the wetland itself.
Okay.
But the actual stone wall and where the drainage is going is in a sloping space along one side of the driveway. So there's actually gonna be the width of the paved driveway before you get to the shoulder and then where the wetland is.
Right. I'm just thinking maybe there's a small patch of grass between the driveway and the wetlands. Maybe they could still provide some kind of a berm there, especially if the water's coming down from, you know,
I think we'll look for appropriate space, but I think the other thing is that was a question raised in my mind was snow shelf. Where do you plow your snow to?
Yeah.
So, that'll all have to be
Yeah,
taken into.
and that comment is minor. And the only other piece I picked up in the narrative, they're talking about, there's a drain at the end of the driveway. And they talk about this will not cause any changes to the chemical or physical characteristics of the wetland area. When I see that word chemical, it makes me worry. But, you know, pesticides and all those things. So my concern would be, all right, there's a drain there, water goes down the driveway, hits that drain. Where's that drain going? Because right across the street, not far down, is a big wetland. So is there any way that we can think about preventing some, if we're gonna have chemicals or whatever going down in that drain into another wetland, not on their property? I'm pushing this limit a little bit, and maybe it's something to think about, that's all.
Right, I have to look further into that. I
Yeah.
know that there's, when they built the home, they did do a drainage system.
Mhm.
It's not, it wasn't well documented what they actually put in and where it is.
Okay.
There's a course idea, so that there is drainage that goes to an infiltration system.
Huh.
But I think what they're gonna do is they're gonna decouple it from that, and they're gonna put a new system in that's gonna do like the whole
Yeah.
element, but certainly we'll look into that.
It's minor stuff, but it, you know, it reads, it kind of blares a little bit like, maybe there's a way we could.
That's a question, whether, why would you put that in
I
there?
don't know.
Unless it was actually being used.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask a question, Rick?
Mhm.
So what is the purpose of the application? Is it to resolve a non-performing drainage system?
No,
Or it's to satisfy drainage because the applicant wants to install a pool?
it's to satisfy the drainage requirement for the work that they're doing in the process. The true project is in-ground pool terraces. In order to put the in-ground pool and terraces, they have to move portions of the septic system. So there is an existing drainage system there. They don't know the full scope of what's there. So the combination is they're gonna do a new drainage system to both attenuate the impacts associated with the development of the parcel of the single-family dwelling, but also with the impacts associated with the pool.
And this is, so we've had a few cases in the past few years at Delafield Island and how all the neighbors are in tune with one another's impact of that wet area. And they all come out to help each other, and things that draw items that I remember the neighbors from prior applications always mentioning is the severe winter condition when there's flooding, how everything freezes up. So just to parlay off of Bill's concern on the driveway. And then my second question was, when the engineer provides a design, does the engineer need to go to the existing system and actually test it to see if it performs? So if the system's going to get augmented or
It's not gonna be augmented, it's gonna be abandoned.
Oh, just outright abandoned?
Yep.
Okay. So a whole new system, okay.
okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. Moving on, new business, or excuse me, old business. EPC 15/2023, 14 Hamilton Lane, M. Lester and M. Lester, to install a fence in and within close to the proximity to wetlands, watercourses, and special flood hazard areas. The property lies along the south side of Hamilton Lane, approximately 670 feet west of Brookside, and is identified as map number 10, lot number 22. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.128 acres. Okay, last time we had a number of questions that came up, Rick. I think you took,
So over the past several months, for those who don't recall, that it is a property that has some special flood hazard area, has wetlands on it. Particularly in the rear of the site, it ranges from lawn space to wooded space. The applicant proposes to do a fence of portions of the property.
hi, yes, yes, good evening.
I'm just giving a brief summary.
What we do first, when we get an application, is we have a summary of what's on the record, what's been said, et cetera. And then when Rick's finished, we'll give you an opportunity to come and talk to us. Okay, and then you'll have the floor for as long as you think you need. Okay?
And there's also 2 watercourses on or immediately adjacent to the property, and more substantial that borders one entire property boundary. And then there's another one that kind of cuts a corner. Through this process, and with feedback from the commission, the applicant has considered an alternative that moved what was originally proposed as a perimeter fence, and it's a combination of deer fence and an ornamental fence on the site, is to alter the location so that in one space it is along the larger water course, but not crossing, and it's been tapered back to not cross the smaller water course as well. So it's on the landward side of the water course. Still in part in wetlands, still in part in the flood hazard area. And throughout the process, there had been, again, discussion of alternatives. There's been submittal of correspondence from the project engineer that stated no adverse impact on flooding, that the fence will generally lay in place. And there was a substantial amount of testimony and consideration of plans over the last couple of meetings. The commission, over the last couple of meetings, had directed, as a result of that, had directed staff to formulate a draft resolution that was responsive to everybody's questions and concerns, but at the same time, it had deferred action to allow the applicant to attend and answer any additional questions that you may have. They happen to be out of town for some period of time, but now they're back and they're able to answer your questions. So I'm available. I drafted this resolution as an approval with conditions. And one of the things that was important to the commission was perhaps do some planting as a ways to mitigate the impact, and that has been included in here. But, and have the very concise,
okay, when you say it has been included, that the applicant will submit a planting plan?
Yes.
Subject to staff approval?
Yes. And of course, the fence shall not cross any ditch or water course, intermittent or permanent. The fence shall further be located to avoid large trees and existing subsurface structures and elevated in select space, generally along the house where the more ornamental fence is, to allow for the passage of surface waters and movement of certain more desirable forms of wildlife. So with that, the applicant's here this evening. I'm available to answer questions, whatever you may decide.
Ma'am, would you state your name and your address, please?
Sure, Marissa
For the
Langsford.
record.
I live at 14 Hamilton Lane.
Good.
So, you saw from the proposal, what we're looking to do is put a perimeter deer fence in to keep deer and other animal out of our yard, as well as keep children in. I have small kids, our neighbors come over. Next thing I know, I have children running the driveway, running to the street. I'm constantly cleaning up deer poop in my yard, which also is a severe health hazard to children. I've recently taken a tick off both my mom and my daughter. Thankfully, those were both
How high
fine.
is your fence going to be?
I'm sorry?
How high is your fence going to be?
I think a typical deer fence is 6 feet. It'll match my neighbor's fence.
Okay. Well, thank you, that's important.
Yeah.
Matching the neighbor's fence and 6 feet, of course.
Correct. It will match the neighbor's fence. It's listed that we're in a flood hazard zone. You saw from the engineer's letter, they don't actually believe we are. My neighbor recently got her Loma squared away. We are about to start the process of doing ours. I've been away for the past 2 months. I have 3 small children. It has not been something I had the capacity to take care of, but the engineer has no reason to believe why we soon should not be considered a flood hazard zone. And I think the neighbor's path proves that that's going to be the case for us too. The water course that we keep talking about to the left of the property, I've been there for 2 years. I've never seen water in there. I've seen mud at times.
But it's scoured. as I recall, it's scoured, you know, it's sort of like there's a little channel for
Yeah,
water there, right?
I took a video of it that I'm happy to show you if anyone would like to see it. I mean, in some places it's like less than, not even 4 inches deep. It's a very, it's like an indentation in parts.
All right,
you know.
just for the record,
Okay.
because, I grew up at 21 Hamilton Lane. Okay, I
Great.
spent my infancy there, and I love the street. The street's absolutely wonderful, a great place to raise children, et cetera. So I happen to know these properties like the back of my hand, because I used to play with the kids the kids who lived across the street from me. And so, no, I would agree with you that there's really, in my experience, there's just not that much water that runs down from the street. There's just not a lot of water that runs down there but it was scoured, which was sort of, I couldn't justify, why is that scoured if there's no water running down, but, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a scientist, I don't know how, but I can tell you that even after heavy rains where there's like muddy puddles other places, like there's not water running through there.
Yeah,
It's kind of mud.
No, it tends to run to the back.
My
yeah.
kids wish there was, because like they like to find the stuff. The only time I found a frog was when I was testing out the egress window and there was one there. And I was, but like we keep being referred to, I have to like remove from the water course. Again, I've never seen water there in like the 2 years I've lived there. I think
You have to go to the Ingram's property. They have a water course that leads, that you'll find lots of frogs.
Yeah, I'm sure, right, down, and I know there's other parts of the street that
Yep.
the water comes from different places. On our like, again, to the right side of our property behind the stone wall, which that water course is not actually on my property because we're in front of this stone wall. It is much deeper, you know, then you're talking like a three, four ditch. I'm not trying to,
No,
we were never
understand
trying to do
there's-
anything there.
There's two different water courses. Do you have bird feeders?
I'm sorry?
Do you have bird feeders?
We don't.
Okay, no, because
we
bird
don't.
feeders have seed typically, like this. So your neighbor had bird feeders, and so I said, you don't want wildlife and coyotes, et cetera.
In the past, we've, at my old house, we used to try to put up the hummingbird feeder.
Oh, that's
which
different.
was really lovely.
That's
But my
sugar
mom's
water.
like every 2 days you gotta change the water,
Yeah,
and
it's
she's not
sugar
around.
water and-
I can't do
and-
it. Like, I don't have time to.
No, it's sugar water. That's not gonna attract, hummingbird feeder is not gonna attract other animals. Pardon?
The seeds and things.
It's the seeds that birds are messy, it falls to the ground, all sorts of minor rodents go and eat the seeds, and the coyotes, et cetera, that are, for them, that's dinner. Okay,
Yeah.
and so they'll make it a point to track and attack the squirrels and et cetera. And that's why I asked, if you don't have that,
Yeah, no.
you're eliminating that.
We don't
You're
have that,
leaving-
but I have seen them walking through the yard before.
Oh, yeah.
And our friends recently had a coyote, like 2 coyotes take down a baby deer in their yard. That was
Oh,
kind
wow.
of terrifying.
Mhm.
And again, like I'm usually out there with my children, but like if someone has to
No,
go to,
no, I
someone has to
understand
go
the
to the
difference.
bathroom, I don't take the 10 neighborhood children who happen to find in my yard and like make them all come inside
No,
with me.
I understand the deer fence, so that, it's not the question. We were just trying to understand the deer fence, okay? So let's continue. I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
no, so I just, like, again, I wanted to make sure that the flood hazard was clear. Yes, we're still in a flood hazard zone because I haven't applied for the LOMA yet. I do expect that, according to the engineer, that should be removed. And this water course that seems to be, I was told we were required to work our way around on the left side of the property, that it was like a direct requirement. I've never seen water there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And again, I'm happy to show anybody the video
I
of
don't
it.
think that would be too helpful to us, because
Okay.
as much as it's scoured and you do see at least some mud, you can have an intermittent water course. So I think we have to go on the assumption, until it's proven otherwise by a soil scientist, that the delineated water course lines are water courses. But that being said, we can work around that, so please continue.
Okay, I mean, is there any other questions I can answer? I was told I had to be here to answer questions, so
Yep.
here I am.
I recall one of the questions that was posed, I think we talked about it on the phone. They'll be pounding the deer fence in or installing it in cement or in cement only
I mean, the vinyl definitely has to be in cement, because otherwise a windstorm comes and that like
But it's
rips
not
everybody
each
else.
post, is it like the ends and like around the gates and the rest is pounded into the ground?
For a heavy vinyl fence, no, I
No,
imagine
for the
that.
deer
The
fence.
deer fence, yeah, they can install how it needs to be installed. Same thing, we'll do the same thing our neighbor did, like we,
Yeah, I just think in the description, it mentions that there will be 60 posts and that they will be set in concrete, which
Okay.
is different than pounding them in the ground.
okay.
All right.
So-
But if
I mean,
you
we
follow
can-
what your neighbor
we-
does, okay, because I think we approved the neighbor, so, or.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did approve the neighbor, yeah. Or did we write it up? Is it?
No, it was approved,
It was
but
approved, yeah.
just one point of clarification. They got a Lomar, all they did was they took the house out, the property's still in the flood zone. So, you know, I
Yeah.
think, you know, that's
Because the
gonna be
property's raised
FEMA.
slightly, yeah.
The FEMA designation is still gonna be, it's in the flood zone, just that the house itself is out.
Okay,
That's what they got at 16.
okay.
Yeah, our house is not near the flood zone. It's all the way in the back, and the engineer seemed to think that that could be removed. Again, not my, like, that's why I hire an expert for that, and haven't done it yet, because
Okay. Does any other commission member have questions?
and can you explain to me this planting plan process? Because that was not
Okay, good. Rick?
instructed to me. I was just told we'll need to agree to put some plants in.
I mean, the commission with 16 said that to offset the impacts of the fence and its impact on the movement of wildlife on the property, that they're in select locations, just a small number of plantings to displace some lawn, filter runoff, because there is lawn up to the edge of the water, of the smaller water course. And to improve the overall conservation values of the site. So it would be some de minimis number of plantings in the select areas, basically along the water course. Could be on the inside or the outside of the fence line. Sometimes it's better inside if there's
Yeah,
the
I'll-
deer
I'll leave
marching
that-
on it.
I'll leave that to the
If it's on the
experts.
outside, be more native, but they can craft a plan, working with staff or working with a nursery and put those de minimis number of plantings in.
Yep.
So select plants or a border of plantings?
Like a border of plantings
Yeah.
along that,
Okay.
where it's lawnish.
Yep. Did you understand that?
Yeah, so we just need to work with someone who can help us with native plants
Yes.
along that way.
You'll probably need somebody from the outside.
But do I,
and
like,
the
is this
approval-
like I need a whole this is gonna become a whole process? I've just done this at my beach house where I actually live on the water, so I just wanna understand what's required of me, because that was a very, like, intense process.
This, no, I understand.
No,
I understand.
each joke,
Some-
I needed like a whole nother survey, like, I live on, it's bayfront water, so rightfully so, that it's important that we like, preserve our bays, but I want to know what I'm getting myself into, because I was told over the phone that
I
I'm
don't
gonna
think
have
this
to
is an
do some.
intensive process.
Do some planting, not that I have
This
to
is not
submit
an
a plan
intensive
for
process.
approval.
What I
Well,
would
you're
do-
gonna- you're gonna-
what I would do is, we delegate to staff this function. And what I would do is you contact Rick, and Rick can give you guidance as to, who, what, where, and what he will approve, okay, in terms of putting various plantings around where the fence is. Okay, where the
And what
fence
is the
runs.
dollar, like, I'm just curious, if you're asking me to spend like 20 grand on plants?
No,
like
no, I'm not
$1,000
asking you to
on
spend, hey,
plants?
listen.
I just
no,
wanna
that's-
understand.
That's not
because-
for us to, that's not for us to decide.
But if there's a certain number of a plant I need to, so,
That's
okay.
right with, and then we'll figure it out. I mean, this is gonna be a de minimis number of plantings along, to have a border along that smaller water course.
Yeah.
It will not be
So
20.
it's not that you're gonna have to go out and, this is your,
I mean, it'll look much prettier with plants anyway, so I'm happy to work with you.
No,
on
no,
this.
no,
I just, like,
absolutely.
I'm very cautious about what I'm stepping myself into by saying I need a plan, I need to submit it. I mean, they literally made us change the, like, a coastal company did the plan, who like does all the stuff, they made them changed, like, it was a big process, and I just want to make sure I'm staying away from
I
that
understand your
again.
concern, and I don't think it's, I just think it's a little bit more relaxed process here, okay? What I would do is he's talking about de minimis amounts of planting around to preserve the to help conserve and preserve the wetlands around where you're putting the fence. Okay, and so typically those are, flora, the species are native to the state of Connecticut. There's a list of them somewhere. Any nursery around here is gonna, any nursery worth anything is gonna know exactly, say, hey, listen, I gotta put some plants around here. And they'll come up with, a simple planting plan for you, and you're gonna take that plan and submit it to Rick. Rick's gonna look at it and go, yes or no, or could you do this or that, or a conversation with you, and that's it. Okay, then you go and execute the plan.
Okay.
And next door is doing the same thing.
What? Yeah, and the next door is doing exactly the same thing, so you're not.
Yeah, she didn't tell me she had to submit a plan. She told me she was just seeing plan.
No, she's gonna submit a plan, it's a sketch.
That's, it's a sketch, okay?
Okay.
Good? All right, moving on.
Great.
Thank you for coming tonight. Okay, everybody has a copy of the minutes?
No, you have to vote,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. What?
you have to vote,
Oh, on the resolution?
yes.
Okay, yeah, that's right, we do have a resolution. Okay. May I have a motion?
I'd like to move to approve the resolution permitting for 15-2023 at 14 Hamilton Lane.
I'll second that.
Favor? Okay, thank you very much. Next item of business this
Wait.
evening.
I had a question because it doesn't specify about the post and whether or not they're gonna be in cement, the 60 posts. So, can we either put that in the approval, that they won't be, or otherwise I will not support the.
Okay. Can we?
Well, you already voted, so
I'm sorry, can I ask?
somebody withdraw it,
I'm
I
not
guess.
trying to, yeah, but
Okay, then, for purpose of discussion, let me withdraw that motion approving 14 Hamilton Lane. Is someone,
is it better to have I'm just playing devil's advocate. Is it better to have the fence fall over in the wetland or for the fence to remain vertical if the footing for the fence is better being made with concrete? And I guess the second part is the concrete going to, it's my opinion that concrete is rather inert. Is a concrete going to impact the wetland?
You're asking me?
I'm just speaking out loud.
So,
I'm sorry, or maybe.
You didn't seem to be.
Maybe express the objection you have to the concrete.
yeah, well, just, it's not that, I agree, concrete is inert, it isn't the concrete per se, it's just the excavation that's required for the concrete. I don't think that based on how the fences are typically installed, they go 18 inches down. I don't think the fence is gonna tip over typically. I think it was represented in one of the documents that we had, I have the date here somewhere, that this is not in the flood zone, that flood waters are not going to affect this. So I don't see why that would be a problem here any more than it would be anywhere else.
I guess, just for my take, they're typically installed with concrete. You said that makes it the most secure. If there's a way it needs to be done, like, we'll tell the guy to do it the way it's done. Really, like, my goal is for it to stay there and not cause any problems. Is that just a headache for me? And if they have to dig down 18 inches with a stake, like, is it?
They pound them in 18 inches.
So what I was gonna say is, the gentlemen that are gonna be installing the fence are gonna be using hand tools to put it in. It's not like there's gonna be, we could make a condition that says that construction of the fence is to be done by hand with hand tools and not excavation equipment.
Mhm.
Maybe that's something that we just do, Rick, as a default in the future when we do have these deer fence applications. It's just like a default checkbox.
Good point. Yeah.
But,
There wouldn't be any reason to put in,
no, I mean, it's-
excavation equipment.
They're just gonna pile a bunch of fence up and
Or,
string a line and go. But I would, Caroline, I would just, in my experience, I would say, this is an aluminum, this is the black aluminum pole steel deer fence with the hex
The plastic,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, once you go through, this fencing isn't cheap. Once you go through the exercise, I mean, I'm sure Bill's got some experience himself with this. Once you go through the exercise of putting it in, I wouldn't want it to come out. I don't have a problem
No,
with concrete.
the question is, does the concrete can provide any significant long-term damage to the wetlands or watercourse?
We put pools in the upland review area.
You know, so.
But this isn't wetland, this is, you know, this is not in the upland review area. If it was in the upland review area, I wouldn't care.
You just vote.
Yeah, I don't have any objection to concrete. I take the point that we're not bringing in excavating equipment for this, but I think I would expand the hand tools to include, you know, an auger, for example, a mechanical auger, if they elect to do that.
Yeah, that's what I mean by hand tool, like
Yes.
someone can like operate it with their hands.
But
Like
not-
you could operate
but
it
not-
with your
not-
No,
hands.
nobody just pound the sucker in, you know, just,
So
you get
I-
a pounder and pound it in.
So
So
for me personally, I don't have any objection to having concrete anchors as posts.
Bill,
I
any?
don't have a problem with it.
Okay. So, Carolyn,
I still think there's a reasonable and prudent alternative, but vote.
all right. Yeah, so you can vote against it.
Okay, so let's make a motion to approve the resolution permitting for
14, yeah, 15, yeah.
15-2023 at 14 Hamilton Lane. Second, anyone?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay, 4-1.
All opposed?
Against.
Against? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Moving on, EPC 20/2023, 29 Fresh Island Road, DCC Revocable Family Trust, to replace a ramp and floating dock with a piling supported pier, ramp and floating dock within 100 feet of Holly Pond and other areas of resource. The property lies along the north side of the terminus of Fresh Island Road, approximately 1,525 feet west of Near Water Lane, and is identified as map number 56, lot 15. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 0.850 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the proposal is, for those who've been, you know, we've all been on the commission or staff of the commission over the last couple of years. There's an ongoing project on the property. It lies directly on Holly Pond. They're renovating the dwelling, doing additions, doing a pool, doing drainage, a very comprehensive plan that included mitigation along the waterfront. This project is to replace the existing dock that's there, and with it's a ramp and floating dock with a pile-supported pier, ramp and floating dock. A permit has already been issued by the state DEP for the proposed construction, and because of our regulations, which necessitate permits for work within 100 feet of Holly Pond, they are before the commission as well. The details of the dock have been proposed and are laid out in the DEE permit. There will be the necessity of doing construction level plans in advance of a building permit and other permits as well. But the applicant has laid out process more than anything, is how it's going to be constructed and to address the concerns that were raised by the board. So in the agenda summary report, you'll note there are no inland wetlands on the property. There are tidal wetlands that are just offshore. There is special flood hazard areas. If you looked at it in terms of coastal resources, coastal flood hazard zone, modified escarpment, which is the seawall, tidal wetlands and embayments, and the process that the DEP requires for those are generally consistent with what we would look. They have provided how are you going to construct this, and they're going to try to do most of it by barge from the water during high tide, so there's
How did
no.
they get the barge in there over the
Well,
over
the
the Holly
applicants
Pond,
this
you know,
evening, but-
between Stanford and Darien?
Well,
It's
they're-
all about timing.
It's all about timing.
Come on, what,
They
let's
do it.
pick the highest tide.
They do it. They built a couple now.
So they get
Really?
over
Because
this.
how much is high tide over that wall?
Well, recently it's been 2.5 to 3. But,
2.5 to 3 feet?
yeah, we had a 9-foot tide recently, but normally.
Oh, well, that
it's
was
less
super
than
blue moon,
that.
okay.
No, normally less.
Come on, come on.
So essentially, the intent is to do it by barge at high tide. The state requires you to do the work at high tide, so that the bottom of the barge is not plopped on the tidal wetland, it's not on the substrate of the pond. They've also have provisions for storms and emergency response that they've laid out in there. They, call for, controls as necessary to reduce water quality impacts. They call for where you're gonna put your storage and stockpiles. And it's all to reduce the potential impacts of putting in the piers and then dropping the pieces in their correct space. We had the applicant review the ongoing development plans, because as an alternative, in the event that they cannot do it entirely by barge, if they have to access by land, that there's enough space around the ongoing construction and where the drainage shall be installed, and so we don't crush the soils in that space, and not to ruin the areas that are gonna be subject to select planting, that he's figured that there is enough room between the controls on the site and where they need to get to. It's in the exact place of where the existing dock is now.
Hey, Bill, you didn't have motorboats on Holly Pond?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
They've also further committed to, they had an engineer review the plans, that there's no adverse impact on drainage, adjoining property, or flood heights. And as they develop them for construction level plans, they will be certified as being essentially flood-proof. That they're not gonna be, part of essentially a debris field post-construction. Finally, in response to one of the questions, they have committed to not install lights
Right.
on the dock. For environmental concerns and for all that.
Yeah.
Light
What about
pollution.
the wildlife lights? Are those not useful? Is it just red light?
We don't need any lights out there.
Up to one more time?
Trying to keep all lights out. in the
Yeah.
water.
Just all lights?
Any lights.
But do you know what I'm referring to? The wildlife, those?
But, it's any kind, then they start changing bulbs out before you know it.
Excuse me, sir, are you here for this application? Oh, okay, you wanna get up and, would you like to get up and talk, or just want to hear us muse?
Do you have a specific question?
No, it sounds like you've done a hell of a lot of homework here.
I do have,
Yeah,
I
it's
do
a
have a
dock
couple questions.
where there's a dock.
Yeah, I know. No, but DEP has approved it, so there's all sorts of
Yeah.
contingency plans, so.
Yeah, I think the question was going to whether there were gonna be any lights on. I think that,
Yeah, no.
yeah.
And I do have a question of timing, because when does the berm planting go in? Because obviously that, you're still working on the other project, and the berm planting was on that, attached to that project, along the water line with where you.
I don't know what's the.
Because there's nothing there now, it hasn't been approved. So I'm just wondering when does that.
But the
actually-
plan has, a plan has been approved, but nothing has been installed yet.
That's the plan. that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So planted, what I'm
So,
saying.
I don't know when they're going to do that, if they're gonna have time to do it
Are
this
you
fall.
involved with that project at all too?
No.
So that's something, we're giving them, not that we have any say if the state puts it in anyway, but it'd be nice to know that they had done some of the things that they were going to do on the first approval of the house and all the other pieces by putting some of that planting in.
Oh, no, they're gonna put all the planting in.
Okay. But
This in no way affects the
I
planting
know, they're
space.
separate, they're separate.
No, but it doesn't affect the plantable space. That will
Right.
continue.
It hadn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened
Hadn't
yet.
happened. And the other thought was, if you had to go by land, there is the septic system there, right? You'd have to go over the top of it.
So, Mr. Calamilli provided me with the site plan that the engineer prepared. There's adequate space to, work around that.
Oh, around the septic system that's over
Yep.
on that side?
We don't need to go over that.
Okay, good. That's all I was asking.
All right.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything?
Nope.
No? Michael? No? Okay.
Draft a resolution for the next meeting.
Draft a resolution. Thank you, sir, for your patience for listening for us for, 2 hours.
2+.
Wilder, I listened.
Wilder.
Okay. Approval of minutes. Everybody has a copy of the minutes. And we had, I believe Jim submitted his 2 cents worth.
Yes, they've been corrected.
And they've been corrected, stand like that. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on the minutes?
Just remember, eligible to vote.
Okay, make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 2nd EPC meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor? So,
Okay.
You're
can't
not
vote.
you
eligible.
can't, you're.
Yeah, I was waiting for him to,
You're
he's
abstaining.
already marking it, yeah, you got it.
Don't worry, we understand you, Michael. Okay, there's no agents approved, there's no, okay, other business is regular scheduled meeting for 2024. Everybody got a list of that. There's only, I hope everybody's reviewed it. The question is, there's 2 here. The night of July 3rd. You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Maybe, let's,
So we can do the alternate of July
let's do
10th.
Yeah.
can we agree to do the alternate?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
agreed. The same thing for October 9 for Rosh Hashanah, because that's the first night, it's the first night of Rosh Hashanah, so out of respect, I think we should do the 9th.
Agree.
Agreed,
Yeah.
agreed? Okay, good. Do we need a motion?
Yeah, we could vote to approve it or not approve it.
Okay, with those 2 changes, may I have a motion
Yeah,
to
with
approve?
those 2 changes, making a motion to approve the schedule of the EPC meetings in 2024.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. The only other thing I have is the next meeting will be October 19th.
Yes.
Okay, so I hope you have it all on your calendars and schedules and stuff.
We checked Mr. Irvin first.
Pardon?
We
Oh,
checked with Michael
please.
first.
So, well, no, let's say, are there any birthdays and no anniversaries? Let's go through it. That's how we say it.
Vacation plans.
Michael?
Do you know what Rick did? He runs the fire department.
No, we
He
have to
runs
get
to the
that-
fire department, or would you just go down to the fire marshal's office
have to go
when
down
he
and
calls
change-
me?
We have to change that. Put it in the thing.
His caller ID is Darien Fire Department. Did you know that?
I never realized that.
What, your caller ID?
Yeah.
Never had that from you.
I got it from Town Hall, Darien Town Hall.
Mine
Yeah,
doesn't
me-
say anything, it just says Darien, and it, yeah. I don't
Well, that's
know
weird.
the answer.
That's weird. Anyway,
Well,
motion to approve?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Okay, great.
Second it.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Channel 79, we're off the air.